Hi, you guys. Welcome to another episode of Ask the Egg Whisperer. This is the second episode for this week. And this is so that I can answer your questions and also have time to chat with you guys live. So thank you guys for joining again. I thought today would be a great idea to ask you, how you doing? You know what I'm saying? How are you? If you're having a hard time, if you're struggling, reach out to someone. Get a therapist, join a group. There's Fertility Rally, there's Resolve. There's so many ways of getting support. Certainly seeing how many people join these live chats and hearing the questions that other people are asking certainly make us feel less alone. But these are really challenging times. And so, I'm here trying to be as strong as I could possibly be for you, but I know that it can be a struggle, for a lot of people going through fertility treatment. So I just want you to know you're not alone. Reach out for your help. Ask yourself that question, how am I doing? And if you're struggling, find someone to talk to and get the help that you need. There's no shame in that. Okay, so thank you guys for sending in your questions today. If you're watching this for the first time, you can go to asktheeggwhisperer.com and enter your question there. And then we always message you when your question is going to be answered, so you can be sure to tune in and you'll never miss it. So I'm going to go ahead and start right now. Here we go. This question is from Heidi from Montreal, Canada. I'm almost 41 years old. I've had 2 miscarriages in 2018 to 19 with a previous partner. My new partner is 47 years old and we have never tried to conceive naturally. The diagnosis of 2 clinics was the same, DOR. However, one doctor recommends in vitro and another one recommends to try naturally. I'm worried to try naturally and to lose time instead of going into IVF. My FSH is 20.6, my AMH is 0.37. In your opinion, which option would give me more chances of success, IVF or natural conception? If you have any articles or studies as reference, please share as well. My boyfriend is very analytical. Many thanks. Thanks for all you do to keep us women all informed. Keep doing your good work. Well, thank you, Heidi, for reaching out. I'll tell you what I would do, and I have no problem telling you what I would do if it were me. I would go into it saying, I expect nothing. Doesn't that sound negative? That sounds really, really negative, but I would totally be as aggressive as possible. Based on your hormone levels, it sounds like you might be able to get 3 mature eggs, get your follicle count checked, track and trend your FSH and estradiol. I can tell you that if your FSH is 20 and continues to go up, the likelihood of having a viable embryo is less than 5%. But I have personally had so many patients who are 40, 41 with FSH levels, even 20, with even 1 to 3 follicles who've had a viable embryo. The key is this: you never want to look back and say, I wonder what would have happened if I had tried IVF first. And the time to do IVF is now, not after 2 or 3 IUI cycles. So my approach for my patients is, let's do fertility treatment, okay? Let's see how many eggs we can grow. And we come up with a sort of decision tree, an algorithm that we'll base our decisions off of. And everyone's decision tree is going to be different. If, let's say, at the start of the cycle, the FSH is 20 or above, we're going to do IUI. If at the start of the cycle, the FSH is, let's say, less than 20, and you have 3 follicles that you can get to grow, then consider IVF. But at least you're maximizing your chances each month, so you don't feel like you're losing anything. You're only giving yourself a really good chance of pregnancy. And find a doctor who believes in your fertility. And it's hard for me to say this because, again, I'm not trying to be negative at all. But you have to go into your treatment with realistic expectations and talk through what we would do if this didn't work. There's egg donation, embryo donation, and adoption. There's so many wonderful ways of being a parent. But talking through that now is really, really helpful. So you see that you are on the same page with your new partner. And make sure to get his sperm checked and maybe have his sperm frozen. He's 47 years old. I'm sure his sperm is fine. But just in case, let's say you want to have your second baby at 50. Well, when he's 50, certainly you can be 50 too. You might want to have frozen sperm now so that you can use his 47-year-old sperm rather than his 50-year-old sperm. And don't forget, take CoQ10. Here's another question from Christina. Christina is 41 years old. Her AMH is 2.45, and she gives us a breakdown of her cycles. Here we go. First cycle had 9 eggs retrieved, 7 mature and 5 blasts, all came back abnormal. Second cycle, same result, 7 mature, 5 blasts, all abnormal. Last cycle, we lowered my meds. We got 11 mature, 4 blasts, all abnormal again. I decided to do 3 more rounds and then call it quits. I'm not going down without a fight. Clearly, Christina, you are a fighter. I mean, all you guys are, no matter how many cycles you do. My RE said I should be able to get a normal at some point. considering I'm making blastocysts. My husband's 41, he's in great shape, takes a ton of supplements, and his last sperm sample was deemed excellent by my RE. Never done a DNA fragmentation test. I've been taking supplements for 4+ months. I've been on a low carb, low sugar diet. BMI is 18.7. Have you ever seen anyone my age do 2 to 3 rounds and not get a normal, but then eventually get a normal? Do you think I'm wasting my money by trying more rounds? Or do you think I'm making a good plan since it's a numbers game? Okay, Christina, here's the thing. You have done a whole bunch of cycles. So I think the question you're asking me, what's the highest number of cycles I've seen in someone who's 41 with an AMH of 2.45 to get a normal embryo? I've done as many as 6 cycles for one patient, and I was her doctor. Me. Every cycle, nope, not this time. Next cycle, nope, not this time. What kept us going was the fact that we were still making beautiful blastocysts, and we were just almost there. And that is so annoying because we can't control the chromosomes. We have no way of controlling what's going to happen once the egg and sperm come together. There's nothing we can do in the lab to manipulate it. It's just like a box of chocolates. You just don't know what you're going to get until you take 10 days of shots, go through surgery, and then wait 2 weeks. I wish it was as easy as just biting into a box of chocolates, but as you guys all know, it is not that easy. So you're doing all the right things. Look at the supplements that you're taking. See if you're taking HGH. Maybe that will help. Continue to, when you're making so many blastocysts, 5 each cycle, the lowest number of blastocysts you've made is 4. It's hard to think that a different protocol will help, but maybe ask your doctor about maybe a different approach, and it sounds like they're already doing that. So again, after 3 cycles, what's the likelihood of still having a normal in the future? There's still a possibility, so don't give up. But you guys all know what I say. Go into this next cycle knowing what you would do if this didn't work. And start talking about that now so it doesn't feel like taboo. It doesn't feel overwhelming. And certainly I know it's easy for me to say it's not going to be overwhelming because it probably still is. And, talk to a therapist too who can help you through these decisions together. But I would never tell somebody, just so you know my style, I would never tell somebody, eventually you're going to get a normal embryo. It doesn't work like that. It's not like, oh, if I just get 10 embryos, I'll finally get one that's normal. When it comes to this kind of stuff, when we're over 40, each embryo literally has less than 20% chance of being normal. So 80% plus of the time, it's not going to have normal chromosomes. And it's not like if you do more, you're guaranteed to have a normal embryo. So that's kind of what I would tell you if you were my patient. But if you were my patient, I would probably be right there with you saying, let's do this again. And at the same time, we'll talk through, okay, if we're not pregnant by January, let's make a plan because I certainly want you to be a parent and stop being a patient. So I'm going to move on to the next question. This is from Mona. Mona asks, hi, Dr. Aimee, thanks for your time. You're amazing. I added the you're amazing part. I'm just kidding. I did not add that. She said that. Me and my hubby are 39 and we live in Australia. I have a low AMH and my husband has a high DFI at 42. I did 1 IVF and 1 ICSI and no fertilized egg on day 1. I'm sorry, Mona. I changed my specialist and she suggested to do endometrial scratching first, and now I found that my NK cells are high. She suggested to do IMSI and HA, which is hyaluronic acid this time, and they will check the DNA of the sperm before injection. She asked me to use Testagel Progenova 2 weeks before the cycle and also gave me Puragon 300, and she lists all her medications. And my hubby took supplements for 3 months. What do you think? Do I have a chance to get pregnant? Thanks a lot for your time. Okay, so what I would say is this. You have a chance to get pregnant, but when the DFI is over 40, the likelihood is pretty small. So guess what? Repeat the DNA fragmentation. Let's see where it's at. Why go into a cycle unless it's under 30? And if it's still over 30, Pixie could help, but you might be better off doing a testicular extraction or maybe adding, there's something cool, it's called a Zymote chip. See if your clinic has access to that. I've actually done, I had a patient do a test once before and after Zymote, and we checked the DNA fragmentation, and it was like phenomenal, the difference. The DNA fragmentation percentage dropped I'm not making this up. I saw it with my own eyes, 30%. No joke. So long story short, use the DFI as your traffic light. If the level is low, green light, go for it. If it's still over 30, maybe yellow light and start investigating other options. If it's still high after you've gone through all the balls method and you don't want to do testicular extraction, consider a sperm donor. I know it's hard to hear, but as women, when we run out of healthy eggs, the first thing we do is go to an egg donor. And we give up our own DNA so that our partners can have a pregnancy with their DNA. An egg donor is so much harder to find because it's so much more expensive also. Sperm donor vials are so much cheaper. And if it's something that your partner is open to, again, talk about what would we do if this next cycle didn't work, because the DNA in the sperm seems to be a big issue here, and then talk through what that would look like. Some guys are like, yeah, like that makes sense to me. I just want to be a dad. And if my sperm doesn't have what it takes, why would I put you through more IVF cycles that don't work? But only do that after you've gone through the balls method. Make sure he doesn't have a varicocele, low testosterone that might need to be treated or could be treated to help things. Make sure his BMI is normal. He's on the right supplements like Theralogic Conception XR. You can use code capital TUSHY for the PRC price, or alphasperm.com and put the code in all caps EggWhisperer50 for 50% off. So those are the things that I would think of and what I would talk to you about if you were my patient. And then for you at age 39, it sounds like that, obviously, I mean, when we're over, even 35 or 37, it's hard to get pregnant. But when the AMH is low, certainly we're working with a small number of eggs. So that's why I think it's really important for us to make really, really smart decisions about what we do with your eggs sooner than later. So this next question is for Summer. Summer is saying, I'm 33 years old and I've had 1 miscarriage and 1 stillbirth at 23 weeks. Summer, I'm sorry, and thank you for sharing. My husband was diagnosed to have an inversion of short arm of chromosome 8 on 1 chromosome, and the other chromosome 8 is normal. Should we look into IVF for future pregnancy or try naturally? I'm also vegan. What's the best vegan CoQ10 and DHA supplement to take? I take Theranatal Core only at the present. Okay, so it sounds like maybe the miscarriage and the stillbirth were likely to your husband's inversion. And yes, I would strongly consider doing IVF for PGTSR. So the process of IVF is what we go through to create embryos. And some people can benefit from IVF, well, a lot of people, for the genetic testing component. So we can actually test the embryos and make sure that they have a normal arrangement of chromosomes before we put an embryo in. And in your case especially, that should decrease the risk of miscarriage and increase your chance of having a live birth. And I'm sorry you've been through so much. I'm so glad there's this technology out there. Find a fertility doctor that you feel really, really comfortable with and take my IVF class, eggwhispererschool.com. And my next live class is on Monday. And, I'm funny once in a while here, but I'm super funny in class. I was going to make a joke. We drink beer, but no, I basically just drink coffee all the time. So here's to my class on Monday. So this next question is from C. I've had 2 egg retrievals with 0 mature eggs, 17 follicles, 8 retrieved, none mature. Next protocol is long agonist with HGH added, and I've asked to change to a different trigger from a synthetic one. I'm 41 years old, AMH is 6, all blood is okay, DNA frag and semen analysis okay. My diagnosis is unexplained. Or age. See, you guys, she put or age because she knows that my eyes will start to roll when I see unexplained, especially when you say I'm 41. That's not fair. If you're 41, we know the diagnosis. We know it's an egg story, and you have to do everything possible to support your eggs, like being healthy, sleeping well, meditating, all the stuff that I talk about all the time. So her question was this: have you ever had success with tweaked protocols in these circumstances? I'm losing hope. And she gives our supplement list: DHEA, folate, CoQ10, vitamin D, vitamin B, and melatonin. And the answer is yes. So the IVF challenge that you're presenting to me is, drumroll please, no mature eggs, and that is really disappointing. So here are the things to think through when you have no mature eggs. Number 1, higher dose trigger shot, maybe consider 10,000 units with a dual trigger of Lupron as well. Number 2, waiting 1 extra day to trigger your to trigger before your egg retrieval. So rather than triggering when your follicles are like 16 to 18 millimeters, try and get them to like 20 to 22 millimeters. That could potentially help. Look at the trigger shot time that you guys used before. So maybe it was 35 hours, maybe it was 34 hours. Make sure it's maybe 36, and sometimes consider 36.5 hours. Talk to your doctor about these different strategies. I bet they already talked to you about them already, but do a post-IVF consult. And this is for everybody. And I know a lot of clinics don't do this. They might have a very well-intentioned and well-trained nurse or medical assistant that calls you with these results. And they don't give you an opportunity to ask questions, but if you didn't know you could do that, now you do. All you do is call the clinic after your IVF cycle and say, "Hi, I am C. And I just had an IVF cycle. It didn't work the way I wanted to. I'd like to schedule my post-IVF consult," and then go through all the things that you're asking me and ask them. Like, How big were the follicles on the day of the trigger? How high was my estradiol level? How many mature eggs were you expecting? What trigger shot dosing do you recommend from here? And what did the embryologist say about my eggs? And then sometimes, because I tell all my patients all this stuff and I give them the official reports, sometimes embryologists would love to talk to you and say, can I talk to the embryologist? Was there anything about my eggs that they saw at that time? And the thing is, if you wait too long, if you wait like 2 months or 3 months, guess what happens? People don't remember. But if you do it in real time, so you got the news that the eggs were not mature, you schedule that post-IVF consult like within a week. So if you were my patient, that's what we do. We don't debrief. Debriefing sounds like something like horrible. I mean, obviously a cycle that doesn't work is pretty rotten. But we do a consult post-IVF and we kind of talk about what we've learned. We don't talk about what went wrong, because each outcome that isn't desired, the way I think about it, it gets us closer to our desired outcomes. So all these learning experiences that we have are getting us one step closer to what was meant to be. And that's really hard to believe when you're in the moment. But if you just take care of today, tomorrow will take care of itself. And then I just remember, just breathe and do yoga. Okay, here's a question from Aimee. Dr. Aimee, your name is Aimee too. I love it. I'm grateful for your show. You give me hope every week. Thank you for generously, I can say that word, sharing your expertise. I have 2 questions. Question number 1, by how much does laparoscopy for suspected stage 1 or stage 2 endometriosis increase a couple's chances of getting pregnant after the procedure? I've heard 30%, I've heard 10%. My husband and I are trying to decide if the risks are worth the potential payoff. I also have lean PCOS. My husband's sperm is great. So let me answer this question first. As far as laparoscopy, it's just so hard to do really good surgical studies related to endometriosis and outcomes. And the reason is you can't take 2 groups of people and say you have stage 1 endometriosis and you do too, and then you're going to put you through surgery and it's going to be randomized and no one's going to know who's going to do surgery, and then we're going to see who gets pregnant. Like, that's how you do a study. But we can't really do that when it comes to this kind of stuff. All we can do is say, look, people who, went through surgery, stage 1 and stage 2, and look at their pregnancy outcome and then compare them to another population. And some studies have shown a little bit of a benefit. Most studies show a benefit if it's stage 3 or stage 4. I've personally seen a benefit at stage 1 or stage 2. I find sometimes there can be things that you can understand about a little bit more from a laparoscopy. Sometimes you're surprised, like, oh, there's maybe some endometriosis on the surface of the uterus, and maybe removing that can help with implantation. So I would recommend doing surgery for someone who might have stage 1 or stage 2 endometriosis. And again, you can't diagnose the stage until you've actually done the laparoscopy if you have symptoms. If you don't have symptoms of endometriosis, then it's called silent endometriosis, and you might be better off doing a procedure. It's called an endometrial biopsy, and I do this because it's basically a catheter that goes in, a catheter that goes out, cells are extracted and sent to a company. The company is Cicero, and the test is Receptiva DX. I wish there were like other ways of diagnosing endometriosis without going through any type of procedure, except maybe like you spit in a tube, or you talk on your phone, or you take a selfie of your tummy. I mean, I'm being silly. Or maybe like you take a tampon on your period and you send it in to someone and they're like, oh, I see endometriosis. I think I might get this patented. That's a concept right there. But in general, endometriosis is diagnosed during a procedure called a laparoscopy, and you don't know the stage until then. And in general, studies show that if it's stage 3 or stage 4, then surgery can help with fertility. If it's stage 1 or stage 2, it's debatable. But if you have symptoms and it's something that you're worried about, I do recommend to my patients to consider a laparoscopy, especially for patients who aren't open to going, let's say, and doing IVF first. So some people want to explore everything possible before doing IVF. In that case, doing a laparoscopy may be a good idea. So Aimee's second question is, secondly, my husband and I have been doing letrozole, also known as Femera, and a trigger shot for a while, and are supposed to have sex 3 days in a row starting on the day of the trigger. The pressure of time intercourse has made things so difficult for him, and we haven't been able to have sex at all for 3 days. Instead, we've been making it work 1 or 2 days. Could our timing be why we aren't getting pregnant, or is it most likely the PCOS and potential endo? And the answer is, it's really stressful to try and have sex at home, especially if you have this pressure of like doing it every single day. Marathons are stressful. Sexathons, I think, are a little bit more stressful. So I think if you're having sex 1 or 2 times around ovulation, you're just fine. And I don't want to make it medical at home, but certainly there are things that you can do. Like use a syringe and a cup and drop the sperm. He can ejaculate in a cup, and then you just put it into your boobs like a little Snuggie. I actually don't think there's a Snuggie that you put anything in your boobs. I'm thinking of a sperm Snuggie that I maybe could be designing right now. Maybe that will come out on April 1st of 2021 to a Walmart near you. But my point is that if it's getting harder at home, no pun intended, I would go to the clinic and probably just take it out of the bedroom and consider doing IUI instead. This might be a good time to do that, and it might increase your chances, and you don't have to worry about, sex on demand or the stress related to the sexathon that's been prescribed to you. My next question is from Kyle. Kyle is saying, I'm 40, I have block 2s, my AMH is 4.06. I had 25 mature eggs, 15 fertilized, and ended up with 2 PGT normal tested frozen embryos, thankfully. Strong work, Kyle. Good job. Good job, ovaries. Good job, eggs. Good job, lab. Good job, everyone. And I'm not saying bad job to the people who don't have normal embryos, but obviously this is like a huge win. We would ultimately love to have 3 kids. First in my age, is 3 possible? The answer is, of course it is. It totally is. Whether you're going to have the energy to have third, let's say, by the time you're 48, I'm not so sure, but, there's so many different ways of having a baby. Your third could be with a surrogate if that's what you want, but I've definitely had patients who've had their last baby at 49, 50, 51, even 52. So if they can do it, I imagine you can too. Second question is, would you recommend I do another cycle now or transfer frozen and do another cycle after the age of 41? And my answer to you is do another cycle now. This is the perfect time to do it. You're still making normal embryos. In 6 months, it could be totally different. Stuff goes down pretty fast after the age of 37. So you can be making normal embryos and then 6 months later not be making them. So I always tell patients, if you're making normal embryos, please do another cycle within about 3 months, especially if you're over 40. So that's hopefully a framework that you can work within, and definitely do another cycle now. Do it now. And take CoQ10. Okay. Here's a question from Becky. I'm on round 2. This is my second IUI. This time there was 5 million sperm post-wash. My follicle was 20 millimeters. I think the lining was around 5 millimeters though. I wasn't told, but I think I saw it on the graph. I'm supposed to check for pregnancy on September 26th, but I checked today and pregnancy test was negative, so I'm not really optimistic. What are some things I should discuss with my doctor for round 3? Also, I'm very superstitious, or this is very superstitious. She doesn't say I am. I'm Asian. My mom has always said cold foods or cold nature foods like watermelon is bad for fertility. I have no idea if there's any science behind it. LOL. So the thing is, that's what acupuncturists say too. They always tell patients to avoid cold things. And I'm like, in one ear, out the other. Is there anything to it? I roll my eyes and say, probably not. But if it's your mother, you kind of got to listen to your mom. No, I'm just kidding. I don't think that having cold foods affects your fertility. I just don't. If it did, when you go to the produce section, there's going to be a big sign on every single watermelon slapped on there. If you're trying to get pregnant, avoid this fruit. So no, but at the same time, there might be something to Chinese medicine. They've been around a lot longer than I've been around and Western medicine has been around, but I don't get too stressed about the whole don't eat cold food thing around fertility or pregnancy or anything like that. I hope I don't feel lightning strike taking me out right now by saying that. So the other question is, what should I discuss with my doctor for round 3? So number 1, why is my lining 5 millimeters, right? If you're on Clomid, switch to Femera. Number 2, actually, let me start over. Number 1, what's my diagnosis? It sounds like male factor could be the diagnosis. With a total motile count of 5 million, your chance of getting pregnant with an IUI is pretty low. So ask Ball's method, get them seen, get them checked out. Go to ballsmethod.com if you have no idea what I'm talking about. I swear it's a thing. It's trademarked. This week, I got my trademark certificate. I digress. So look for DNA fragmentation, which is background genetics. Depending on how low the sperm is, consider chromosome analysis and other genetic testing. Look for a varicocele, which can be removed surgically and improve sperm counts about 75% of the time. Look at his labs. Just like we get poked, we get our hormone levels checked, he can get his hormone levels checked too. Look at his lifestyle. See if he's on any medications that could cause his sperm count to be low. And then talk about your sex life and what's going on there. And the thing is this, you might be a good candidate for double IUI. So that's another thing to talk to your doctor about. Is there anything we can do in our control to improve our sperm counts? Is there anything we can do about the diagnosis to improve our chances of pregnancy with this IUI? And in a case like yours, if the sperm count is on the lower side, ovulating more eggs could help. And maybe a double IUI. I know some doctors say, I don't think it helps. I think it kind of does in cases like yours. Some studies show it does, some studies show it doesn't. Anecdotally, it could help. It doesn't hurt. Talk to your doctor about that too. So this next question is from Madison. I'm 26 years old. My AMH is 4.76. My periods are 28 to 30 days apart. Periods are not painful and last about 5 days. I have low progesterone after ovulation. My husband has low count and motility, although after a varicocelectomy in December 2019, he's taking supplements. Oh, this is great. After the varicocelectomy, his numbers have improved greatly, and his urologist is super pleased. We did IVF in June, got 22 eggs, 14 fertilized, only 1 blast, which we transferred day 5, and they got pregnant. Unfortunately, I had ovarian torsion and had a right oophorectomy about a week after the transfer and miscarried at 8 weeks due to a genetic anomaly called Turner syndrome. I'm sorry, Madison. That sounds like quite an IVF cycle, and I'm glad I'm able to talk about it and share it because other people can hear that this stuff happens. It's not common. I mean, ovarian torsion about 1% of the time, but all of that stuff, I'm sorry that you've gone through it. We're about to start another IVF cycle in October. Obviously, you're super resilient and I want it to work. My doctor said the only thing he's changing with my next cycle is this, not use birth control. Oh, and he's also adding HGH per my request, although he doesn't think it will help in my case. And she's asking, anything else you would add to my protocol? I also take ubiquinol, vitamin D, and a prenatal daily. Thank you so much. Okay, this is the thing. I would ask, what the heckity heck? Why only 1 blast? What happened? What did your eggs look like on the time of the egg retrieval? How did the embryos look as they were progressing? Did they look normal? Ask if you should think about doing a chromosome analysis, same with your husband, before your next cycle. Ask, should I be doing a sperm DNA fragmentation test as well? Because this might be helping you decide whether you should think about a different approach, and maybe the sperm or the blast formation rate being as low as it was, could it be still related to low DNA fragmentation, even though your urologist is super stoked? So be sure to get the DNA fragmentation checked, especially with what happened to you. I think HGH can help. I don't think it would hurt, but I would also do all the things you're doing and then certainly ask your doctor what day the embryo is arrested, what they think as far as your prognosis is for your next cycle, what would you do if this next cycle didn't work, and then talk through the protocol that they have you on and what changes they would make. And if there's anything in the lab that you need to know about as far as like the comments that the embryologist made about the eggs or the sperm quality on the day of the egg retrieval, that might help you guys decide how to do things a little bit differently. So for example, in a case like this, for me, I would make sure that I would think about doing PIXI. I already mentioned the DNA fragmentation test, and maybe consider doing a testicular extraction if it's super high, despite looking at all the balls method, which it sounds like you've done, looking back at his testosterone, and both of you just get into the best shape of your life. But I'm really, really hoping that this next cycle goes very, 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 very well for you, Madison. Okay, this next question is from Nicole. She says, hi, Dr. Aimee. I'm seeing a doctor in Chicago and just had my second retrieval with her. I'm 35 years old. AMH is 1.3. My FSH bounces around 9. I got 15 eggs, 13 fertilized, 9 blasts. Wow. All 9 are off at genetic testing. What are your thoughts on ERA prior to frozen transfer? It will be my first transfer. Nicole, this is a great question. So it sounds like you think it sounds like the diagnosis could be egg quality maybe, and it just took a whole bunch of eggs to get these beautiful embryos. It doesn't look like you have an egg quality issue once you've done IVF, because the embryos, it seems, are pretty darn viable because you have 9 blasts. But the thing is, let's wait for the chromosome results and then we'll decide whether we do implantation testing, yes or no. My general rule is this: if you just want to do implantation testing and get it out of the way, do it. Do the ERA, do the receptiva, do it all. However, if you have out of the 9 blasts, you have 5 that have normal chromosomes and you're really happy with the quality of each one of them, then maybe skip the ERA and implantation testing and then go right to a transfer. The mistake people make, though, is this: they transfer their best embryos before implantation testing, and then by the time they've done the implantation testing and they go back to do the transfer, they're working with lower quality embryos, and then that's why the transfers don't work. So that's why I'm very, very careful when I make the decision about doing implantation testing or not. I make it based on the quality of the embryos, and I make sure that my patients will still have high quality embryos if the first transfer does not work. If, let's say, I have 1 5AA blast and everything else is, let's say, 3BB, that sounds really fun to say, 3BB, okay, you guys, I'll stop saying it, then maybe do implantation testing. And then something else that you can strategize around is maybe transfer the 3BB first and see if that works. But obviously, I want you to get pregnant as soon as you possibly can. So talk to your doctor about the things I just talked to you about too. And don't forget about your embryo diamonds, right? Right? You guys all know what I'm talking about. So the diamonds acronym basically stands for the 8 things that you need to know about your embryos. So I did my last Egg Whisperer show on this topic, so do watch it and listen to it because I think it can help every single person who's done IVF. And I think you probably already know all of these things. So thank you, Nicole, for that question. This next question is from Joyce. Dr. Aimee, I truly appreciate your shows, which are super helpful. I recently had my first egg retrieval, 20 retrieved, 17 fertilized, 7 biopsied for PGS testing. However, we're really sad to hear that only 1 embryo came back normal after testing. I'm currently 38 years old and do not have any particular identified infertility problem. Would you please share with me your thoughts on why the normal rate is so low for my case? More importantly, how should I best prepare for my frozen embryo transfer with only 1? I have questions about some advanced testing like DNA fragmentation, chromosome analysis, and I'll truly appreciate your answer. If the test results of DNA frag or chromosome analysis show some problems, is there anything we can do to improve it? And if so, what could that be? Okay, first of all, Joyce, 38 years old, having 1 normal, that's super normal. It's hard though because you saw so many blastocysts, and to have 1 that was normal feels like a huge letdown. And of course it is. I mean, even when you get 20 retrieved eggs, in our hearts, it would be weird for us to be like, oh my God, I'll be so happy with 1. But the reality is we all want all 20 to turn into blastocysts. So it's not realistic for us to be super happy that out of 20 eggs, we got 1 blast. But as a fertility doctor, I just know that I would be jumping up for joy when I got 1 blast for someone who's 38, even though it took 20 eggs to get there, because I've certainly been here before and had 30 eggs to get no blast for someone who's 38. So I think partially it's related to age, genetics, and your environment. The things that you can control are your environment. So checking the DNA fragmentation and then addressing that with supplements, healthy lifestyle, seeing a urologist, ruling out a varicocele, talking about other procedures you could do at the time of the egg retrieval. And I would consider doing another egg retrieval now. And you guys all know, because I just said it about my embryo diamonds, so don't forget the M of the diamonds, mosaicism. So many clinics are still not transparent with their patients about their transfer protocol for transferring and reporting mosaic embryos to their patients. So while you might think that all the embryos are normal, not so fast. Find out from the genetic testing company, do a post-test consult with them, and find out, are any of my embryos mosaic? And then you'll really know how many embryos you could potentially have that could turn into a healthy pregnancy. I know what I'm saying could seem as controversial. However, I feel like in the next 6 months to a year, it's not going to be controversial anymore, and everyone's going to be talking about these things with their patients. So be sure to talk to your doctor about it, do a separate post-test consult with the genetic testing company, ask them the same questions, and then find out more. And then consider doing another cycle now, and you're doing all the right things. And then obviously, you know what I'm going to say next, take CoQ10, and then the other supplements that I recommend like NAD and pterostilbene, resveratrol, acai berry, something in that family. And talk to your doctor about what you learned from the cycle, what you do differently next time, and then do all that stuff now before you transfer so you can have a chance to have a second pregnancy if you choose to in a couple years. Okay, guys, this next question is from Elle. Elle is asking, hi, I'm 36. I've been trying to conceive a second child for 3 years now. My AMH is 0.7, FSH is 8.5. Everything else was normal. Genetic tests said I was positive for a carrier of biotinidase and MTHFR. I was recommended to do IVF by 2 REs that said they wouldn't be surprised if I conceived naturally, even though I was told I may have undiagnosed endometriosis. I was 35 at this point. I started acupuncture. After taking herbs for a few months, I developed a rash. My acupuncturist suspected a possible autoimmune issue. My TSH over the last 3 years has been normal. The only thing I've noticed is that my periods are very regular, but they go off only when I try to conceive. Usually 27 days, but can be 23 or 35, but only when I try to conceive. This happened when I was trying for baby number 1 as well, but luckily I got pregnant after 6 months at age 31. Would appreciate your thoughts. Okay, so your AMH is 0.7 at 36 years old. So my thing is, let's take, not for granted, let's take advantage of your young 36-year-old eggs. When your AMH drops below 0.6, for example, we're at higher risk of having chromosomal issues with our embryos and having a higher risk of miscarriage. So my recommendation for you is be as aggressive as you feel comfortable being. And what that means is, if you were my patient, I would strongly suggest doing IVF. I think that the cycle to cycle variability that you're describing having to do with when you're conceiving, totally random. Sex doesn't affect your ovulation, doesn't affect when you ovulate or your cycle regularity. Your ovaries don't know that there's sperm in your vagina. I promise you. However, if you track and trend your FSH levels, I imagine since your AMH is 0.7, you might be having these spikes of FSH. So some months when your FSH is really high, maybe your period's coming sooner. Some months when your FSH is normal, your period's coming later, or vice versa. Who knows? So track and trend your FSH and estradiol levels, and let's learn more about your body. Look at your follicle count and talk to your doctor about doing IVF sooner than later. This way you're going to give yourself a higher chance of pregnancy, and you won't look back and be like, why didn't someone tell me this? At the same time, you can also just approach things as doing fertility treatment and increase the number of eggs ovulated, and you can combine that with IUI if you want. But this clue about endometriosis, I'm like, I wonder what that is. And we know that endometriosis can also affect egg quality. So that's why I'm like, you're 36, your AMH is 0.7, you might have endometriosis, you want another baby. I wouldn't just assume that the next one's going to be easy. And I know you don't assume that because that's why you're here. So my patients who might have undiagnosed endometriosis, we might consider doing an HSG, even though you had one baby already, taking supplements like CoQ10, adding N-acetylcysteine around 600 milligrams per day. These are the things that could possibly help you also get pregnant, and talk to your fertility doctor. At what point would you feel comfortable doing treatment on me, and see if you guys can come to an agreement. So if you were me, I would say, look, if I'm not pregnant naturally by, let's say, November or December, by January, we're going to be doing IVF together. So come on over, sign up for my Egg Whisperer class, my IVF class and Egg Whisperer school, and we'll talk more about IVF, and it'll be a party. I know IVF doesn't stand for is very fun. Sometimes I think it stands for is very effed up. Seriously, I know I can't say that, but I can, because I get to say whatever I want because I can, and I'm not afraid. And the reality is, I want you guys to know that some days are better than others as a fertility doctor. Some days are a lot better than others. And today is a pretty good day. You know why? Because it's shining sunshine like outside right now. So that puts everybody in a good mood. Thank goodness. So this next question is from Rachel. Thanks for answering my previous question about the HPV vaccine. You're welcome, Rachel. You mentioned that I would need to get vaccination since I wouldn't need to get the vaccination. But you also said unless you've already been exposed to the virus and to prevent throat cancer, but if you've already been exposed, the vaccine wouldn't help anymore, right? And the answer is, Rachel, I think I'm right. But I would talk to, someone who does this all the time, and that would be a general OBGYN. So general OBGYNs, they're the ones that have the latest and the greatest news, or what should I say, updates about the vaccine and who should get it. I have definitely seen women who are 26-year-old get the vaccine, and I've also seen women older get the vaccine. But I'm thinking maybe you don't need it, especially if you're in a mutually monogamous long-term relationship for over 10 years, you probably don't need it. Okay, this next question is from Alyssa. I'm 39 years old and I just had my first IVF with 2 donor embryos. After IVF with my own eggs produced only a few horrible quality eggs or embryos, we went to embryo donation. My doc was very optimistic because my lining was over 8, my estrogen was 75, but neither one stuck, and he said he wouldn't change a thing next time. I'm on all these drugs, and she just describes Lupron, estrogen, birth control pills. So she's saying, I know it could have just been that the 2 embryos were abnormal. Do you have any advice on what I could do to make sure my uterus is not the problem? I've been trying to conceive on my own for 2 years now, and I've had dark brown spotting between periods for most of that time. My period is only 2 to 3 days. Is it possible that my lining was so thick because there was old blood or tissue along with the fresh? If so, what do you suggest? Do you think trying a fertility cleanse would be a good idea before my next IVF? Okay, here's what I would do. If you're having that intermittent spotting or intermenstrual spotting, I would consider doing an HSG to look at the fallopian tubes and making sure that brownish discharge that you're experiencing isn't coming from the fallopian tubes. I would also do a very careful saline infusion sonogram or hysteroscopy to look really carefully at the cervical canal, look in the uterine cavity, look for tiny polyps, and see if that's what's going on. If you are my patient and you reported intermittent or intermenstrual spotting or bleeding in between periods, and we did all those things and it was still happening, I'd be like, next time it happens, come in. I want to take a look at that cervix and see what's going on. It could be something very easy to explain called an ectropion. It's just the surface of the cervix can be a little bit sensitive, especially after sex or bearing down, especially around ovulation. you can get a little bit of that discharge. But we would just want to make sure that it's not interfering with implantation. And also, I would want to make sure that it's not endometriosis. So consider doing implantation testing since you've gone through all of this so far. So do the ERA test, consider the receptiva test, talk to your doctor about all these things. And then certainly, you're right, it could just be that the embryos didn't have what it takes and has nothing to do with your uterus. But I think looking at all these things makes perfect sense based on what you've described. So this next question is from Alyssa. I'm 39 years old and just had my, oh no, you guys, I just read that already. It's like Groundhog Day. Let's go to the next question. Thank you, Alyssa, for your question. This is from Tiffany. What is the association between endometriosis and miscarriage? What are the chances of having a live birth through ART with an endometriosis diagnosis, controlling for other factors? Is surgery necessary before a transfer? Okay, so Tiffany, I think a lot of it has to do with the extent of the endometriosis, especially how it affects your uterus. Endometriosis is associated with a condition very commonly called adenomyosis. And adenomyosis in the walls of the uterus can cause implantation rates to be lower. So ask your doctor, what can I do to prevent the progression of my adenomyosis and endometriosis? And there's certainly a lot of things that we can do nowadays. It's not perfect, but there's still things that you can do. And in a case like yours, depending on how severe it is, you might want to consider doing IVF to preserve embryos, because we know endometriosis is fertility threatening because it affects and really threatens the strength of our eggs no matter what our age. And then you can treat the endometriosis, for example, through medications like Orlissa, Depolupron, Femera, before you put an embryo in. And just make sure when I have a patient who has adenomyosis, I always want to make sure she has more embryos than we need for her to meet her family size goals, because of the fact that endometriosis can reduce implantation rates, especially if there's endometriosis involved. So I do that test called the receptiva test to get the BCL6 score beforehand to see how much treatment I need to do. I don't always need that test to be done to determine the treatment ahead of time, because sometimes just clinically you can see that a patient has pretty severe endometriosis, and so I'll treat them regardless without doing that test. So this next question is from Stacy. So Stacy's question is, thank you so much for taking the time to look, you're very welcome, at my question. I was just wondering, what testing should I be asking for? Here's my history. 1 fresh transfer and a miscarriage at 10 weeks. 1 fresh transfer, beta was 25, started bleeding 2 days before that test. 1 frozen embryo transfer, failed to implant. I also have 2 embryos that are PGS tested that came back abnormal. I'm sorry, Stacy. So I would just ask for FSH, estradiol, AMH again, kind of see what your levels are, do another antral follicle count, look for endometriosis, look at sperm, do chromosome testing, look at sperm again, and think about, should I do sperm DNA fragmentation testing? Put it all together, look at your lifestyle, look at the supplements that you're taking, and potentially try again. That's the hardest part, I'm telling you. Try again. And I don't think of embryos as rolling the embryos, right? Or like rolling the dice. And I hate that part of what I do, is sometimes you just got to keep trying. And a lot of times you have to keep trying. I mean, you can look at every single question we've received today that I'm talking through, is just people are so resilient and strong. They're still trying, just like you. So I feel like there's still a chance that you could have a healthy pregnancy. I don't know your age though, because of the fact that you're still making blastocysts. So if you have it in you to do another cycle, I would go for it. And then you guys know what I say. Talk through what you would do if this next cycle didn't work, so that you feel like you can take a deep breath and know that the future is good. And it certainly is. Everything is going to be okay, because the end is not here yet. And once it's the end, then you know I'm trying to be very deep and philosophic, but I'm confusing myself. So I'm going to go to the next question, you guys. Here's the next question. This is from Samantha. In the past 2 cycles at the same clinic, I had a similar result where the embryos are developing well at day 3 with 8 to 12 cells, and then they cease on day 5 and 6. The first cycle had 9 dividing day 3 and only 2 morial on day 5. Stimulation was 300 gonal and cetrotide. Second cycle, 6 dividing on day 3 and same result. Stimulation was 12 days at 300 gonal. My husband has high abnormal morphology with almost 0% normal. We went through ICSI and they can find good sperm. I'm heartbroken, just don't know what happens from day 3 to day 5. Okay, so do the sperm DNA fragmentation test. Consider doing, adding, let's say, HGH. Make sure that he's taking his vitamins and supplements and minimizing things like, not just minimizing, but stopping completely marijuana, cigarettes, and alcohol in moderation, or just cutting them off completely. I would look at Ball's method and make sure you've ruled out all of those things before you do this again. And I'm sorry that you've gone through this, and yet another cycle hopefully will yield a different result. And it seems like your doctor is making adjustments on your medications, but if they haven't decided to add, HGH, ask them about that and see what they think. And then obviously take CoQ10 and add other egg quality supplements too. But it might not be all egg. I would do a chromosome analysis as well, and I would certainly try again, and maybe a different protocol. So this is a question from Maya. Maya is asking, hello, doctor. Do you recommend another prenatal besides Ortho Molecular? I'm in Toronto and it's difficult to find. So I do recommend the Ortho Molecular prenatal. It is hard to find. I can ship it from my office to clinic or to patients, but otherwise it is hard to find. If you get it on Amazon, it's like $150 a box, but doctors can get it for like $50 a box. So yes, there's a prenatal. I don't know if you can get this one. It's called Ritual. So Ritual is a good one. I think it's pretty good online. I've compared it. I like the ingredients in it, so maybe try that. And then her other question is, can anything done prior to pregnancy to strengthen the cervix besides progesterone? I don't know. Prior to pregnancy to strengthen the cervix, the only thing that comes to mind is something called a TAC, or trans-abdominal cerclage. It can be placed laparoscopically, and there's some great TAC surgeons. One of the best TAC surgeons happens to be in Chicago. So if I have a patient, I think his name is Dr. Haney, and he might be retiring soon. He's wonderful, but he has a colleague that's going to take over his practice, or his practice of doing TAC. So that's definitely something to think about and ask your doctor about too. So this is a question from Lisa. Lisa is saying, I'm 43 and I've started with IVF 2.5 years ago due to my age. I have a polyp in the uterus and male factor, low morphology and low motility. My hormone levels are normal. I've had 2 hysteroscopies to remove the polyp and 1 laparoscopy to check the tubes and remove endometriosis. I've had 8 IVF cycles. 8, you guys, 8 cycles. And each cycle I grew 3 to 9 eggs, but only in round 6 did I get one day 5, a 5AA. I had a chemical pregnancy and a miscarriage at 9 weeks. I then started CoQ10 before my 7th round of IVF. 7th round, people. Lisa, you hats off to you. Keep up the good. Wow, that's a lot of cycles, and it's just helpful, I think, for people to hear what other people go through, to know that what they're going through is, very similar to what other people are going through too. My AFC was 7, and finally on 3 made it to day 5 in my 7th cycle. Holy smokes. I then did a transfer and miscarried at 8 weeks. Egg retrieval number 8, again, AFC of 6, again, 3 day 5 blast, fresh transfer of 1 5AA, and I miscarried at 6 weeks. In my country, it is not allowed to do PGTA unless you've had 3 miscarriages. I know everyone watching here is like, why isn't she doing PGTA? Now it makes sense. It's because she's not allowed to. So here I am now. I have 4 blasts left for my last egg retrievals. What should I do next? Another round of IVF or test? So now if they're going to let you test, maybe consider testing. Test in another round. And then maybe put these embryos together with those embryos, but only if that clinic feels really comfortable doing that. I know for me, the labs that I work with in the Bay Area feel comfortable, and obviously I had the final say based on the quality, to thaw, biopsy, and refreeze embryos and get results back. So that might be a good strategy to use, but before you even do that, maybe consider doing a chromosome analysis, you and your partner. Look at the uterus. Make sure it doesn't have, I just drew a septum. Go through my angel workup, right? So autoimmune, anatomy, nutrition, genetics, rule out endocrine disorders, and look at your lifestyle. I bet you've already done all of those things, but before you do another cycle and do genetic testing on your embryos, I would do that as well. So certainly talk to your doctor about doing another cycle and genetic testing. I think it would be really hard not to do another cycle, or to just test the embryos that you have and not have a viable one there before doing all the things that I just mentioned to you. So consider bringing those things up with your doctor and see what they say too. So my next question is from Laura. Laura says, hi, Dr. Aimee. I'm 35. I have an AMH of 0.9. I have stage 4 endometriosis, and at the end of July, I had surgery to remove 2 endometriomas from my ovaries. 15 centimeters. Ouch! And 10 centimeters. Wow. I was told to wait until my next period and then start IVF right away. Well, my period never showed up, so I called my RE on day 42, and they did blood work and showed that I recently ovulated and must have skipped my period. He had me start stimulation the next week, and I had an unsuccessful cycle. I started out with 6 to 7 follicles, but at my last ultrasound, he thought he would probably only get 4. When they went in for the egg retrieval, I was in the process of ovulating, and they got only 2 eggs, which ended up not fertilizing. I'm worried that we rushed into my first a cycle too soon after surgery? Is it possible my cycle went so poorly because my body wasn't fully healed? So my thought, Laura, on this is, first of all, obviously it's a great question to ask your doctor. I can't answer these questions completely, and this obviously isn't my expert opinion either because I'm not looking at all your reports, but this is what I'm thinking. If your hormone levels were not quite there and your estrogen level was a little wonky going into the cycle, that could be a reason why the cycle wasn't the greatest. If you were my patient and you had surgery for stage 4 endometriosis, I would move right into an IVF cycle without delay. So I don't think it has to do with moving into your cycle too fast, but I would repeat your AMH level and kind of see where you're at right now, as well as an FSH estradiol. And I would consider cycling again. I would give yourself 1 month off. That's my approach. It doesn't mean it has to be your doctor's approach. And then move forward with your next cycle. And then make sure you're doing all the endometriosis supplements to reduce the risk as much as we possibly can environmentally of progression of endometriosis. Things like N-acetylcysteine, turmeric, CoQ10, melatonin, ovasitol. So these are all things that could potentially help with endometriosis and improve egg quality. And so take these things if you aren't already, and then strategize around when you should do another cycle. And then now that you have all these data points from the first one, you'll know when you show up for your next period, depending on how things look, you'll know if you should be moving forward or not, because you'll have levels to compare things with. So like I said, track and trend your FSH estradiol levels, do a follicle count, and see if this next cycle is a good one to move forward with. And I would say just go for it. With each period, you don't necessarily have to wait a month, but you might want to just show up, see what your levels are, and decide if you should move forward or wait a month. But I'm sorry you had that experience. And I would say there still is a really, really good chance that this next cycle would be successful, even though this cycle was kind of wonky and didn't work. So I would definitely try again. So this next question is from Libby. Libby says, "Hi, Dr. Aimee. I hope you're doing well. I want some honest input." Libby, I'm going to give it to you. "Does getting a laparoscopy for endo prior to IVF really replete or deplete your reserves? I've had 3 miscarriages last year at age 28. I'm classified as DOR with an AMH of 0.5, AFC of 9. My last 2 IVF cycles failed. I can't help but think that the silent endo is affecting my quality and maybe quantity as well. It just seems like maybe I'm not responding well to IVF because of all the estrogen or drugs that are making the endo flare and go crazy, and also these embryos are developing in a possible toxic environment. I know RE say to do IVF and then depalupan, but I'm feeling so conflicted and haven't been able to get to transfer yet. We're switching to an out-of-state doc, and the doctor recommends priming with estrogen and then an antihistamine FET protocol with depalupan. P.S. I'm already taking all the supplements under the sun since April." Okay, Libby, this is what I'm thinking you should consider doing. Listen to your ovaries. Literally, listen to your gut. Your gut is saying there's something there. Unless you have big endometriomas that are going to be peeled out of your ovaries, which it sounds like it doesn't, doing a laparoscopy, in my humble opinion, I don't think will hurt. It can only help. Do it. And then go right into your IVF cycle from there. With your young age of only 28, your eggs aren't disappearing overnight. They still go away over time. So waiting another 3 months or so to get to your next egg retrieval is not a big deal. So I would take the time to do the laparoscopy, find out what you're going to learn, stay on all the supplements, and then certainly go forward with another IVF cycle with a different perspective. And it sounds like you're doing that. And then I agree, doing depalupan before your transfer, especially with with the endometriosis diagnosis, can potentially help and improve your implantation. So go for it. Listen to your gut. Don't look back. And I don't think you could regret making the decision to do a laparoscopy, because it doesn't sound like you have big cysts of endometriosis that they're going to be removing. This next question is from Sam. So Sam is saying, "Hi, Dr. Aimee. I recently started my IVF journey. I'm 33 years old. I had 1 miscarriage at 6 weeks. No sac detected. Only HCG was elevated and I had bleeding. So it sounds like that was probably a biochemical pregnancy. I then conceived again the very next month, but pregnancy ended in a stillbirth at 23 weeks. I'm sorry. Further testing revealed deletion of a single chromosome in the baby. I was diagnosed to have MTHFR. My husband's analysis revealed the same chromosome abnormality. Before going into IVF, I want your opinion as to what my protocol should be. My AMH is 2.81. My antral follicle count is 17. My vitamin D is 23. Should I have Pixie? What would be the absolute do's and don'ts for my case? So I would find a doctor that you love working with. You have a very high, good egg count and a really nice, robust, and reassuring AMH. Your history tells me that your chances of implantation should be really, really good, because we know the reason for the biochemical pregnancy and the stillbirth that you experience. We know your diagnosis. So as far as protocol, I think any standard IVF stimulation would be really fine for you. And the do's and don'ts, basically the do's are to be hydrated, sleep well during your cycle. I tell my patients to drink Gatorade, G2, Propel, Powerade, those kinds of things, salty drinks throughout. Make sure you have Tylenol and Motrin. Have a heating pad. Whey protein works really well, especially around trigger time to prevent ovarian hyperstimulation or even the bloating and to improve the physical recovery after an egg retrieval. So I don't think you can go wrong with, we have so many wonderful IVF doctors in this country and around the world. And I think your case should be pretty straightforward. However, talk to a genetic counselor about what their expectations are. With his genetic abnormality, what we need to know is what is the likelihood of viability of each embryo. So let's say you have 17 eggs. What is your IVF pyramid going to look like? Print it out. Go to my article, What is IVF? You can go to my website on my blog, draimee.org, and put into the search engine, What is IVF? In there, you're going to see the IVF pyramid. I would print it out and bring it to your doctor and say, what will my IVF pyramid look like for me based on my age, my desire to have, and tell them how many kids you want, and my husband's genetic abnormality. So then you can know going in what your realistic expectations are from treatment. You can talk to your doctor about it. You can also talk to a genetic counselor about it. So you know you've had all the information up front, because sometimes you go through retrievals like this and you might find out there are no embryos that have normal chromosomes. And that's really hard. So those are the things that you want to find out ahead of time. What is the likelihood of success for each embryo based on your age, your follicle count, and your husband's situation? Would I do Pixie? Yeah, I would do Pixie. I don't know that you necessarily need it if his sperm is good, but if there are any issues with the sperm, I would say do Pixie. And I hope that helped. So thank you, Sam, for your question. And I wish you all the best with this upcoming IVF cycle for you. And take my IVF class. It'll be fun. It's next Monday. This is from Melissa. Hi, Dr. Aimee. We're having our first egg retrieval in 3 weeks. Last week, I started the keto diet, and I'm feeling good, but now I'm second guessing whether or not it was the best decision so close to our egg retrieval. Do you think this diet change could harm our potential egg retrieval numbers or egg quality? I'm 34, healthy BMI, and my age is 1.24. And Melissa, I don't think so. I would just get your preconception labs done if you were worried. Maybe do a cholesterol panel and a hemoglobin A1C and make sure everything is normal and healthy. Otherwise, I don't think a keto diet is going to hurt your egg quality at all. Not at all. So this question is from Sophia. Hi, Dr. Aimee. I'm 40 years old and was diagnosed with an endometrioma 5 centimeters on my left ovary. No previous pregnancy. My AMH is 1.9, FSH is 8.9, AFC 13, and tubes are open. I'm taking low-dose naltrexone, NAC, alpha-lipoic acid, CoQ10, prenatal, melatonin. My question is this. Will I have a successful IVF without removing my endometrioma, or do you recommend doing surgery? I was told that with the endometrioma and my age, the egg quality wouldn't be good. Besides, FSH shots during IVF would make the endometriosis more aggressive. So IVF would make the situation worse. Do you think I can have a successful IVF? We're planning IVF with PGT and an FET. I prefer to move forward with IVF without doing the surgery. What do you recommend? Thank you. Okay, Sophia, this is the thing. Your follicle count is amazing and awesome. I would say go for it. As long as you're not in severe pain, as long as your doctor thinks they can get your eggs without having to go through the cyst, meaning they can see your eggs. If you were a patient of mine, I would definitely give you the option of doing surgery, but I would try without it first. You're on all the supplements already, which is great. That's really, really great. I would do IVF first and then consider removing the cyst before your transfer. And that's because the endometrioma can secrete inflammatory cytokines that might inhibit or impair the ability of an embryo to implant and might cause other problems too along the way, like a twist of the ovary. Whenever you have a cyst on the ovary that's over 4 centimeters, it can sometimes twist and turn, and that can cause something called ovarian torsion. It can be a surgical emergency anytime, but in pregnancy, it would really kind of suck if that happened. So that's what I would consider doing. My egg whisperer diet, right? Your diagnosis, which is endometriosis. You'll do IVF, and you'll do embryo transfer preparation. And for you, it would be treating the endometriosis followed by a transfer. Thank you, Sophia. Okay, you guys have asked me. My goal is to get through all your email questions in 30 minutes or less so that I can then answer your live chatted questions. I haven't gotten there yet. I still haven't gotten there. And I will try and make this my goal. And I'm going to do another Ask the Egg Whisperer, you guys. It's going to be on Saturday with Dr. Duret Norhassan, okay? So this Saturday, we'll do it again. So submit your questions to asktheeggwhisperer.com, and I'll do a live Q&A to answer your questions, especially the ones that are chatted, with her. We'll make sure we get to your live chatted questions. So thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. No matter where you are in the world, keep trying. Don't give up your dreams and goals. And today, especially when you're listening to the show, ask yourself, am I okay? And if the answer is, I'm not doing so okay, make sure to get help. There's no better time than today. You deserve it. You deserve to get help. You deserve to be a mom. You deserve to be a parent. I don't want you to be miserable. I don't want you toughing it out. I want you to live your life to the max and not let the experience of being a fertility patient take away your joy. So not to get too mushy and not to get too cheesy, but that's kind of what I'm all about. I'm the biggest cheeseball, passionate fertility doctor that you can find. And I love answering your questions, and I love that you guys join me here. And I hope you guys will join me again this weekend, and then again next week, and the next week, because as long as someone has a question about fertility, I'll be here answering your questions. So I love all you guys. Keep sparkling and keep your